All right. So I am back in civilization, I guess. Obviously my first day back from my 7 day solo retreat. I guess kind of as an overall summary of what I did, it went very well. The whole thing went very, very well. I was able to get, I'd say, a fair amount of work done. I ended up getting obviously the second draft of my wrestling small town story there completely done. And now I am moving on to making the first draft, if you want to call it, of the tarot new sections that I have to add for the story. I do hate that word first draft, to be honest. I use it obviously colloquially just to refer to the fact that it's gonna be that I'm putting down new words right now. I'm writing new sections that did not exist previously. But to be honest, I've never been really a big fan of that term. I hate just the idea of first drafts. I talk a lot about this in a lot of my earlier videos where I don't really believe in like the crappy first draft, the first draft that's terribly written and all that stuff, and you go back and you edit later. For me, revision always happens basically the moment you put the page down. Like the moment you strike the key on the keyboard, that's when the revision begins right there. It's not get all the stuff in your head down and then go back and fix it. I've compared writing a lot to the analogy of laying down tile, where you have to lay down like the first piece of tile correctly. It has to be like this perfectly centered thing. Otherwise, the rest of the floor is off. It's not angled properly. And that's basically how writing is for me in terms of sentences. For me, like the sentence that I put down needs to be perfect, relatively. It needs to be a strong sentence. It needs to say what I want it to say, basically. I'm not saying it needs to be fancy. It doesn't need to be this amazing prose, but the sentence has to be good enough to say what I want it to say, and it needs to be what I want it to be, like what I've imagined it basically in my head being. Because what happens is when people talk about things like revision, they're not saying like completely reimagining the piece. What they're saying basically is just fixing up some sentences that look really bad. You make some adjustments here or there. Maybe you shift around a few things, a couple paragraphs. Maybe you rewrite a few things, and then basically you keep the rest of it, right? The beginning of your story generally remains. The ending generally is there, and a lot of what you did before is still there. You're not revising in the sense of like reimagining the entire story and just keeping the handful of sentences that seem to actually work really well, and then delete everything else and kind of start over. People don't generally speak when they talk about revision. They don't do that. That's what I try to do with my first drafts. Is there's a lot of laying down sentences and deletion. That's often why in these videos you'll see me typing away probably at the parts of the day where I have like the most momentum, like the most good sentences that are coming down. So you don't see me typing, pausing, deleting, all that stuff. So I'm pretty good about cutting these videos to the point where you see kind of the more interesting parts of my writing, if that's even a real thing. But that for me basically is what I'm doing now. I'm just laying down new words, putting down a new sentence. I'm putting down a new first draft, if you want to call it that. But yeah, for anyone that's maybe trying to take some advice from this, I would again implore you, don't do a bad first draft. Do a first draft that is written strongly, and it might help you to not think of drafts at all. Again, I don't like the term drafts. I tend to just think of it like when I put a sentence down, it's already open for revision right there. If it's when I put it down, is it okay? Is it strong enough to stay? That should be more of your attitude. I'm not saying you need to be like like I think Ray Bradbury, who like would I think he would just write every single word that he wanted down, and then by the time that like he got to the end of his book, there were no revisions. So basically when he was done with a chapter, that was a completed chapter that he was good with, and then he would just basically go on to the next chapter, and by the time he got to the end, he was done. I'm pretty sure it was him. There's a couple other writers that have done that before as well. The idea of just doing like one complete draft. I'm not that, I guess at that level basically where I can do that. But for me, when I put something down, it's always on the table basically to be cut. The moment I put the sentence down, and I'm not thinking about just getting this down for the sake of having my idea on paper so I can come back to it with like the supposed fresh eyes later on. It for me it does not work. I think that's a good way of solidifying a lot of bad work and shaping a lot of your thoughts, because these sentences that you write and what you put down on the page is going to inform your thoughts. Every sentence that you put down informs the way the story's told. Before anything is put on the page, there's a million ways to tell your story. The moment you put even one sentence down, you're already shaping the way it goes. It's kind of like that pipe dream game when you were, I'm not sure if anyone remembers that, but for those of us that may went to school in the 90s, there was a game when you were a kid called Pipe Dream, basically, which is where this like green like sludge stuff comes out of this pipe, and you have to build basically like a series of like interconnecting tubes to keep the sludge basically like going before it ends up, and you can shape it any way you want. You can do like right turns, left turns, you can do crossovers and all that, but the moment you put that single piece of piping down, you're controlling the direction that the sludge is going to go. It's the same thing with your story. The moment your sentence is down on that page and you leave it there, that's going to shape your story. So you need to make sure that that sentence works well. Again, I'm not perfect. These things never work perfectly, but just again, being more cautious about what you put down the first time rather than writing a very terrible draft and just calling it done and hoping to fix somehow it's going to magically be fixed in the second draft does not, just again for me, does not work. But yeah, so that's been me basically this week, is just putting down new sentences here, just new sections, new chapters. I don't know how long it's going to take me necessarily to get the new stuff down. I am going to do a video here at the end of the week, just on my updated goals, because I am going to do basically one giant goal for the month of March. So keep an eye out for that video. I'm going to do that in a couple days. But at this point, yeah, next couple days, it's going to be just putting down new sentences.